At the end of the day, my job is effectively to support the 10 districts and then thus the residents and everybody within Greater Manchester in realising the actual goal and ambition of being carbon neutral by 2038. So I am merely a policy maker, but at the same accord, my role is twofold, and that is to actually see physical delivery happen on the ground. And as a net result of that, what you're going to hear about today started 2.5 years ago. So just so that you're aware of the journey we've been on, this has come from better part of 4 years of thinking. We wrote a strategy called the Whole System Smart Energy Plan, and we went from there, and then that led into a number of projects and delivery that you may see. So, Greater Manchester Combined Authority, we are effectively the overarching organisation that supports all 10 districts. So my role is not to tell the 10 districts what to do, it's to support them. So if they've got a challenge, they come to us, and then we will look to fulfil that gap in the market. We operate a number of different boards and different groups. They range from stereotypical scrutiny boards with exec members all the way down to open forums such as this. And I'm really proud to be here today because it's the first time I've done anything like this with citizens. And we discussed this, myself and Rachel and Jonathan at Carbon Co-op, better part 2 years ago. And it was initially part of the thinking in the first project that led up to this, which was almost 3 years ago. So this has been a long time in the making. So I'm glad to see you all here today. And I was going to ask you, because you all know who I am, just to go quickly around, but I'm not going to do that because I've been told you're going to do it this afternoon. But long and short of it is, that's who we are, GMCA, and we're there to provide and support to all the different elements. So what's the Local Energy Market Project? Well, I've touched on the fact that it stems from something 3-4 years ago. What you can see on the table there, on the screen now, are the different partners in the bottom right-hand side. And this project wouldn't be possible without those partners coming together. Partners coming from all different walks of life. But if I just take you back a step, where did it come from? The strategy outlined that if we wanted to get to 2038, we needed to optimise our energy solutions that we're using in Greater Manchester better. You know, in essence, how can I take the energy in GM and produce it here, provide it locally, make best use of it, instead of giving it to Yorkshire, Liverpool, everywhere else. Not there's a problem with any of those areas, if any of you are from there, but it's about how can we make use of what's in our locality, because then that benefits local residents, local businesses, local jobs, etc. So, economic value. So, we've been working on that for a number of years. We started off as a concept design, funded by Innovate UK. It's a long process, so we bid in. It takes us a number of months to write the bid. You find out 3 months later it's successful, then you get given 6 months to deliver. Then lo and behold, guess what? You then bid in again. You get told 6 months later you've been successful, and then you've got 2 years. We're coming to the end of a 2-year programme now, which is what we're going to show to you. The partners there range from different elements, and again, it's been developing new business models and different aspects throughout. So, why have you been called? You've been called because, simplistically put, I don't have all of the answers, and I don't profess to. The answers have to come from everybody. And part of this process is to basically allow and provide the opportunity for citizens to comment on what we're thinking of doing, what we're currently designing. Does it make sense? Are you involved? Do you have any questions and queries? And again, how it could be designed and deciding on how it may come to life. The critical piece there being may. This is a detailed design project. It's about understanding how it could be formed, and then how should it be formed afterwards is part of this discussion. So, who commissioned it? Well, you've just heard me say that, you know, I've asked for this many moons ago with Carbon Co-op, but equally then Graham Oakes, who's a former founder of Upside Energy, a small entity that's now been bought out by Octopus Energy. He has nothing to do with that company now, but again, he's an innovator, critical to this process. And Jonathan Atkinson at Carbon Co-op. So we make sure we got that citizen engagement piece brought in. But the role of the group is to identify the questions for you as the jury. So we've presented some questions back to you. It's imperative for me that I hear back from you what your thoughts are, because this shouldn't just be the brainchild of a group of us. It should involve many more. So, subject to the jury, key themes are local energy markets and the governance. So the critical piece there is we need to explain to you what a local energy market is, and then walk through what the different governance options are. These two topics will follow through with the different experts you'll speak to over the forthcoming days. Ultimately, we will ask you to look at different ways that Greater Manchester local energy market could be governed and owned in the future. So when we ask you these questions, we want you to have a very open view of how. because we've all heard of the different companies around the country, Robin Hood Energy, Bristol Energy, the one in Warrington, that were managed by local authorities and didn't transpire to make it through the last couple of years. That said, that shouldn't be a prerequisite to say immediately no, but equally at the same accord, it shouldn't be a prerequisite to say it should be dealt with by somebody else. So your thoughts in that process are critical to me and equally everybody else. So where are we now? And the decisions that the jury to lead to decisions were being made. So at this moment in time, it is still in design, it's still being developed. We'll finish the design work towards the end of June, and then we'll work on it beyond the funding process that we've got. So the funding we have with Innovate UK expires at the end of June, but that doesn't just mean we stop, because there's lots of things happened and we need to bring that forward. It's a good time for us to hold this because I've actually got something to tell you. We've got things to show you. Whereas if I started it at the beginning, I'd have been talking to you about a concept that actually had nothing tangible behind it that we could actually point to and say, this is what it may or may not look like. And then equally, once we've got your answers and your jury questions back and equally challenge, no one said challenge, but once we've got your challenge back and scrutiny, we can build that in. Because the one thing I've picked up with Innovate UK and equally their funder base, government, is they're really interested in what happens through this. So it's not just it's a box ticking exercise, far from it, because if we do something at Greater Manchester level, we need to make sure that the residents are actually involved and businesses, so there's lots of different forums for us to do that. Next slide, please. So why do they matter? Well, I've just alluded to the fact that your voice and the voice of many others needs to be heard. So we need to decide how the GMLEM could be owned and managed. So I've touched on the governance and ownership elements. And these decisions are critical, because if we get that wrong, then you, potentially, customers in the future, beneficiaries, won't use it because you feel that it's been handed to you or forced upon you. And we know it's important that citizens have to have that trust. So if I was to turn around and say, what's the GMCA logo look like? 90% of the residents in GM probably wouldn't know what I'm talking about. But if I ask you what your council logo looks like, that's completely different. So we need to build that trust and move forward. So how will the results be used? Well, they're going to be included in a full market project report. So the report itself will have a summary section, which is effectively the culmination of lots of different work. And then there are going to be a number of appendices underneath. These appendices are going to range from local energy planning. So where do we need to retrofit? Where do we need to put solar PV, EV chargers, etc. Where does that geospatially need to be put? And we've done 8 of those already. There'll be 11 in total, 1 for each district and 1 for Greater Manchester. That's appendix 1. And then there'll be different appendices there afterwards. But this information that you provide back today will form part of that full report. And that full report will then go back into CA, into the Combined Authority. It will go back to government and it will go back to regulators, because some of this can't happen without regulation change. It can't happen without policy and legislation change. So relevant stakeholders, including GM partners, will obviously utilise those results. We've touched on some of the partners at the beginning, but Graham Oakes is an outside consultant that we've brought in to actually work with us as a partner, and we'll be looking to bring that in, and we'll be feeding back to Ofgem, Innovate UK, BEIS and others. So it forms part of a critical report to push back to them and say, if you want to make real change, if you want to see things happen on the ground, this is what we need. And part of that argument back is we've held these forums, we've listened to you, we've fed that back. I'm not one for hiding behind things. I'd rather go warts and all in transparency, because at least then it's there, people can see it. There is no point in saying, well, that didn't happen, when really it did, because you fall foul at a later date. And as I say, the results there will be shared via Carbon Co-op's project webpage, and we will build in, when we've completed the project, we'll build all of that into the Combined Authorities web pages, and equally a website called the Green City Region, which is directed towards residents and businesses alike. So whatever we do, we'll feed back out again through those channels. So in summary, jury has been called so that yourselves and people of Greater Manchester, business owners, etc., can actually have a part to play and feel involved in actually structuring what we do next. Now, don't get me wrong, some of this will come down to, is it financially viable? Who's going to pay for it? But you have to start from the point of, how's it going to operate, and then move forward from there. Decisions will need to be made with good understanding, so that's why I'm here today. to try and talk to yourselves in a language that I'm not baffling you with acronyms, because Rachel hates it when I do that. I start talking about the different projects and everything's got 4 letters usually, which is the acronym for that particular scheme. But the results of jury will be included in the project, and I've made it very clear, and I keep reiterating that. I talk to BEIS on a weekly basis, I talk to Innovate UK on a monthly basis, it's all getting fed back. And the results of this will be shared with relevant stakeholders. So stakeholders, when I talk about relevant, it's the districts, it's the network operators, it's Ofgem. So when I say network operators, I mean Cadent, the gas operator, I mean Electricity North West, because they're being turned into distribution service operators. So they will be allowed to do different things with flexible energy and so forth. And I do mean all of the government agencies I've just referred to. So long and short of it, the next steps are about deciding how a local energy market could be owned and could be governed going forward. So I'm going to stop there because I've spoke really quickly, but there's an awful lot of information there. Just to be mindful that the local energy market is far bigger, the project is far bigger than the actual flexibility services. So when I mean flexibility, I mean, how could the gentleman on the right hand side, Gordon, how could you sell your energy to, is it Kate? How could you sell your energy to Kate, as an example? Or if I've got, or GMCA or a district or a large local public body have got a solar farm, and I know we're building solar farms in Rochdale currently and one in Salford, and there'll be more. How can we take that excess energy and sell it to somebody on the other side of Greater Manchester that needs it? Currently, that's quite challenging. But through this mechanism, and the mechanism being effectively, the way I describe it is, think of eBay, but this is eBay of energy. So, Gordon, you've got some energy you wish to sell, and Kate, you need to buy some. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to pay your energy company 33p or 28p, but Gordon's quite happy selling it to you. He's making a little bit of money, but he's quite happy to sell it to you at whatever number it might be. I'll pick a number, 15p. You've got a saving. Gordon's made some money. He's not giving it back to the grid at currently what SEG is, Smart Energy Guarantee is about 3 to 5p. So you're making 10p, give or take, after deductions. So think of it in that way. The local energy market is effectively an eBay of energy trading. It's the easiest way I can describe it. So hopefully that's giving you a view of what we're doing. So quite happy to stop there and take questions from yourself. 10 districts, so forgive me if I get one wrong, but I'm told there's a representative from each of the districts in the room. So we've got Wigan, you've got Bury, you've got Bolton, you've got Rochdale, you've got Oldham, you've got Tameside, you've got Stockport, you've got Trafford, you've got Salford, and finally you've got Manchester. So I have to count it on my hands, just so I make sure I get all of them. Even though I do represent all 10, but it's always good to check.
And just as a follow-up on that one, we've got why are they important? It was a question. So whoever asked that question, if I'm interpreting this wrong, let me know. But I suppose in this Greater Manchester scheme. So just so I'm getting the context correct, why are they important to the scheme and why are they important generally? Well, if we do things on an individual district level, you're only going to get a certain amount of aggregation and potential. If you look at Greater Manchester overall, there's 2.7 million residents, 1.2 million homes. So bring it together, that gives you, the region, some real buying power, some real collective purchase that we can then go back to government, go back to Ofgem, go back to the energy providers and say, actually, you're not talking to one district, you're not talking to one resident, you're talking to the cumulative amount. So that's why it's really important from a project level. For me, everything I do has to touch all 10 districts, or at the very least, the vast majority. So 9 times out of 10, I'm dealing with all 10. Worst case scenario, 8 or 9, but you know, most of the time it's all 10.
So why would it be that you are going to dismiss the other 2 for what?
It wouldn't be dismissed. So what it would be is everything that we do, I have to go back out to the districts. So if, for instance, there's government funding, we've all heard of Green Homes grants, we're aware of this particular project now, we're aware of other things. I can't bid for that money without permission. So I have to go to what we call wider leadership team, which is representatives of all 10 districts. And then from there, it gets ratified at Greater Manchester Combined Authority. It gives me approval to bid. So that's why it's important. Now, if 2 of them decided that they didn't feel it was within their interests or whatever, but the other 8 say it is, generally the message would be, we proceed because it's the greater value for everybody. But everything we do is based on a decision taken by wider leadership team or Greater Manchester Combined Authority.
So being a devil's advocate,
Yeah.
that's just one example.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example why you wouldn't?
Why I wouldn't in...
Why you wouldn't involve the 10 districts?
Well, from my point of view, given the example I've just provided there, we've had one recently where one authority didn't want to participate. However, we still built the programme and built the project so the residents and everybody within could still feed in. Just they made a decision that they were resource constrained and couldn't proceed at that time.
I'm trying to get at Sean is, you know, these government bodies and there's local people, and sometimes it's a case of one person speaking, for example, maybe this is a political thing, Brexit. Everybody didn't vote Brexit.
No.
So that's why I'm asking you, from that perspective, is you go to these particular people and they say, this community doesn't want it, but actually they might want it.
Yeah, so unfortunately, because of the process we have to go through, it doesn't get to a community level, so I'm talking to chief execs and leaders and so forth. So invariably, if a district says that they can't participate in something, a funding bid or of thereabouts, it's not because the community can't benefit from it or they won't benefit from it, it's because they are individually resource constrained. And unfortunately, that's something we've seen more and more across the country in recent years. We've seen LA officers are less and less. 2 years ago, there was only me at a GMCA level doing low carbon. We've secured an awful lot of funding, which means that there's more than just me, which means we can do more. But that is a prime example there. It's not about the district not wanting to, it's the fact that they are resource constrained. Hopefully that answers there.
What you just said, can you just get this straight? So you say that all 10 districts come together to apply for funding and so you need all 10 districts to get a good amount of money to go to the energy suppliers to bid on?
No, so the example I was given about funding, about the decision-making process, was about government funding. So if government is putting a funding call out, and we've seen a lot of this over the last 2 years, I cannot just simply, on my own back, decide I'm going to apply for that, because that takes time, money, resource, which is paid for by everyone in this room. So I have to go to what we call wider leadership team. They have to give us permission. So I make a case to them. They give us approval to proceed. It's ratified at a combined authority level. If
all 10 districts say, yeah, we want that,
Yeah.
you said it gives you buying power and collective.
So that we need to uncouple 2 things. So one's about the decision making to apply for funding, as the example I gave. If we're talking about the project in particular, why do it at a GM level? We do it at a GM level because it gives us greater capacity to go back to government with a single voice, as an example. It gives us the greater ability to actually attract those different options in, those different investment options. If we're talking as invariably one individual or one district, that voice is still very strong. However, if we could talk as a cumulative, as a collective, with a single voice, that makes it even stronger again.
So you've got your collective, you've got your district, you've got your funding, and you said buying power, collective purchase for bidding to energy suppliers.
Yeah, so using the example of the 10 local authorities, and they're buying energy, as an example. If they're buying energy as one party, they're buying X megawatts, so X amount of energy.
The more money you have, the better deal you can get.
For want of a better word.
So would you be using that then in this LEM?
So that's one of the trading options that we can look at.
So that's one of your things that you'll be doing in this LEM?
Yeah, it'll be one of the trading options we'll look at. So when we get into the actual nitty-gritty of what does the eBay of energy look like, there are lots of different ways of creating value. So revenue streams, how do you create value? If you can create that value, then you can effectively make a decision on, does that value sit with this person? Does it get passed on to this person? Does it get held? And then funds things for individuals that are unable to meet that requirement.
So what I was asking really is what they're going to be using that money for.
So that's all part and parcel of this discussion. Yeah. So just very quickly to answer that bit there, there's lots of different revenue streams, so you have to make sure that the business model is viable, and then there's a surplus. I don't call it profit, I call it surplus, because at this moment in time we haven't decided on an ownership model. If there's an ownership model that says it's owned by A, then that's profit. If there's an ownership model owned by B or C, then that's a surplus there, and that can be distributed in different ways.
Great, and then the next question is what scale is meant by local?
So when I refer to local, I'm referring to the local energy market being GM as a region, but then equally within that, there would be, and we're modelling currently, the ability to trade at a substation level, which is effectively what you would call a ward, so a ward level. And if I pick on certain aspects of Greater Manchester, if I was to say to them, you live in Wigan, I'll get looked at in quite a strong way, because they don't live in Wigan, they live in Ashton and Makerfield, or they live in Lee, or they live in, and likewise I can say the same of all the other districts. So people might make a choice to actually only want to procure energy from the solar farm or the wind farm or whatever it may be that they can see in their community. They may also take a view of, actually, we just want to buy energy within Greater Manchester, because there are parts of Greater Manchester, being brutally honest, that are not windy. It rains everywhere, but it's not windy everywhere. Okay? Or you can't have a solar farm in the middle of, on the peaks of Oldham and Saddleworth and so forth, because at the end of the day, it's not the right terrain to do that. But why should somebody in that side of the conurbation not be able to purchase renewable energy locally? So that's what I mean by local, but it's got different connotations and layers.
Thank you. Why is it going to take so long to implement?
Good question. It has taken me 4 years, and those partners, some of which you can see in the room today and others that you've seen on the board, to get through the concept design, and these things cost money. So to put it into context, the concept design was £150,000, and that was just to take a light bulb moment and turn it into something that actually looked like a project, an idea, that concept ideation piece. Then you bid again, and your bidding takes 3 months, and then you wait 3 months for decision, and then you mobilise. So all in all, between different bids, you're at 9 months each, and then you get the money to actually do the detailed design. The reason we've had to do it that way is that these things are super risky, they are really innovative, they've not been done anywhere else, and that means then that I can't realistically come to the combined authority, the districts, residents, and say, by the way, I want to spend your taxpayers' money on something that is super out there and it might not come to fruition. That's why it takes time. We're at the point now where we're doing a detailed design, we're finishing that shortly. Then it's a case of then saying, what market conditions do we need? Can we set it up tomorrow? Currently as it stands, we think we can, but it won't do all the things we want it to do, all the things it needs to do. So then you have to phase it out. And that's because regulation says you cannot do A, B, C. So regulation being Ofgem, government, they set the rules by which energy can be traded, and so on and so forth.
So do you mean innovation actually in Manchester?
Yeah.
Or that there's other models like in Finland, for instance?
So there is a trading platform called is it the Nordic? It's the Nordic trading platform, which is across Finland, Norway, Sweden. And they trade energy, and you can see it at half hourly. I think Octopus's flexible one is as close as you can possibly get in the UK currently. But that isn't truly half-hour purchasing. That's someone behind the scenes doing some great maths, let's say. Whereas the Nordic one, the regulations allow for peer-to-peer trading. They allow for trading to be done at that level. So currently in this country, we couldn't replicate what they've got because we need to make certain changes.
Is it that they've got a patent on it? Or?
No, it's just simply down to regulations and the way the energy market's structured elsewhere.
That's purely a regulatory matter then, rather than a technical matter?
In the main, yeah. You have to look at the way our energy is produced. It's produced from a top-down. Whereas I'm saying, if we want to do it, we need to break that. And to break it, you need to decentralise the system. So you're going to get some people that are going to go, oh, no, we don't want you decentralising it, because that's their model. And you've got other people like me going, actually, if you want to make it better and it's got a part to play. You shouldn't break everything, but there needs to be that middle ground that needs to be sought.
Are we the only jury, or is there other possible outreach?
So I'm going to look to my colleagues at Carbon Co-op. Is this the only jury, young Rachel?
So this is the only jury for this project. However, we have held other activities, which is where I've met some of you originally, and some of you have been involved in those other activities. So we've done a big public, a big tour of Greater Manchester, where we went around on a bicycle and talking to people in shopping centres and in parks and in community centres about this local energy market and getting people's views, and that's really what's informed a lot of why we've chosen to do this citizen jury. We've also had in-depth conversations and interviews with people who own heat pumps and electric vehicles to get their views on how they've engaged with this market. So this is the only citizen jury that we've done under.
If I can add, sorry, just before the gentleman, John.
Will you be including vehicle to grid?
So as part of, the local energy market project has got lots of different strands to it. Strand 1 is about local energy planning. We're the first part of the country to do that, from a postcode level all the way up to the pylons that you can see. Only place in the country that's done it. Now I'm getting bombarded with people wanting to do it. That's that one. The next two are vehicle to grid. So vehicle to grid trading models. So what's the tariff look like for vehicle to grid? How could that be done? How could that be taken forward at a commercial level and also at domestic level? Then there's the whole bit about how can, I picked on Gordon before and Kate, how could Gordon sell some of his energy from his house to his neighbour, as an example, at a domestic level and equally as a business. So how can we maximise the energy being produced from one building to the next building? That was another part. The next piece was what we're talking about today, consumer engagement, and then we've got a regulatory work package, and then beyond that we've got the design of the local energy market. What does that look like? So yes, vehicle to grid is included in that. Just to close off the conversation there about citizen juries, this is the only citizen jury in this context. What we are doing and will be doing is we have something called a mission-based approach at Greater Manchester, which takes the whole challenge of 2038, carbon neutrality, and then says, how do we get there? Well, to be brutally honest, you need to plant more trees and we need to do more with the environment generally. We need to work on building retrofit, we need to work on low carbon, we need to work on skills and so on and so forth. So there are challenge groups set up underneath that meet on a regular basis. They usually meet about every 8 weeks. This project, after this citizen jury is completed, will go back to that group, and that group is made up of SMEs, micro businesses, utility companies, a real range of business providers. So we'll be taking similar questions as today and the process you're going to go through back to them as well. So citizen jury, this sense one, business jury, if you want to call it that, another. Hopefully that answers that point.
Thanks, John. Yeah. And then will the young people be involved in this change? And there's an example here that my 16-year-old daughter would be 30 plus by the time this is implemented.
So in answer to that, we have the Green Summits usually every year, and as part of that we've had the Youth Assembly that the Mayor operates. So ideation such as this needs to be fed back into schools, and for me it needs to be part of the STEM process, because the younger they are, the more understanding. My kids are in their 20s, thank God, and they will have a part to play because their children will then have a part to play as well. So for me, it has to be fed back through numbers of different channels. Communication's challenging getting to schools at the moment because there's lots of other things they've got going on, but that doesn't mean that we're not reaching out to them. We're just reaching out through different means and different mechanisms.
And is this happening, this policy change in other authorities?
So when we talk about policy change, we're looking at it from a GM point of view. West Midlands are looking at local energy in a slightly different manner. They're looking at it from a village point of view. How does it affect a village? Penultimately, all of the Prospering from the Energy Revolution funding funds several projects. That's all being fed up to BEIS, and then it forms part of their white paper. I meet with different individuals from BEIS on a regular basis, and I'm forever pushing back on the agenda And the agenda is everything from how do we retrofit homes, so make sure we don't need the energy in the first place, to how do we optimise at the other end. It takes time, folks, and I'm really sorry.
Sorry, that was my question. It was more, this is something that we're doing in Greater Manchester. If it's something, obviously, you said there needs to be a policy change and legislation change. So if more people are doing it, that would give it more weight.
Yeah, so
that was more the question, are we collectively as a country going to be pushing?
Yes, so the white papers that have been out and recent energy strategies do refer to decentralised energy, a lot more heat pumps, a lot more solar PV. Not enough about onshore wind, it all seems to be offshore, but to make all of those things happen, it does need local energy. We're pushing from a GM point of view, because we're probably one of we are the next combined authority outside of London that's had the longest standing relationship, so we've got that ability to push. We are talking to West Mids, Nottingham's, Bristol's, through what we call M10, which is the 10 metro mayors, and we're also talking through what we call core cities being the big cities of the UK.
And this next question is about the partnership. So OVO Energy was mentioned, and Octopus Energy was also referenced. And this question states that these companies have gone bust, so how can they still be partners?
So OVO hasn't gone bust. OVO bought all of SSE's residential customer base about 4 years ago. They're currently transitioning it across. So OVO are classed as one of the big six now, if you want to call it that. A little more easy to work with than some of the others, is probably a polite way of putting it. Octopus are certainly not gone bust. Octopus are led by a gentleman called Greg, who's their CEO. They are expanding all the time. They're probably one of the agitators of the energy market, is probably the polite way of putting it. But penultimately, we have to work with all energy companies. So irrespective of whether they're challenging to talk to or not, it needs all of them to come together, and you know, that's part of my job, but equally at the same accord, it's yourselves as well.
And is the local energy market just a council energy company like Robin Hood of Nottingham, or is it more than just an energy provider?
So it's not an energy provider, because it won't have a trading desk. It won't have a supply licence. That's why I describe it as an eBay of energy, because at the end of the day, it is there to bring together two parties. So the risk value of being an energy company, as we all know from Robin Hood and so forth, is substantial. But what are we good at? We're not energy suppliers. So you procure and you partner with an energy supplier because you only need their trading desk or you only need their license. But ultimately, it's about creating a platform that allows the exchange of trading, for want of a better word. You're creating that marriage in the middle, that link. And at any point, the customer can go, actually, that's not for me. And what it means is that big companies only want to work with 5 and 10 megawatts and above. The greatest respect, I've got solar PV at home. I am never going to produce 3 and 5 and 10, 15 megawatts in a single year. I do about 2.5 megawatts of hours of generation. So for me to play with those entities, I would need to join everybody in this room and. And that's what the eBay of energy is looking to do. It's looking to give the opportunity for those that fall underneath that threshold, the opportunity still to trade and to do what the others are making an awful lot of money out of for their own gain, whereas this would be about giving people choices, options.
And do you have any more information on the local energy markets mentioned in, for example, Warrington, Bristol? Why didn't they make it?
So Warrington and Bristol weren't local energy markets, they were suppliers. So Bristol Energy was owned by Bristol Council and it was effectively an OVO, an Octopus of British Gas. So standard stereotypical supplier. Nottingham, Robin Hood, same thing again. And then Warrington, a slightly different derivative, but in essence was a supplier company. So nothing dissimilar to your British Gas of the world. Why didn't they work? That's not one I can possibly answer for you. What I can say is we did look at it as GM or as AGMA as was 6 years ago, and the risk that presented to us as taxpayers and us as an organisation was just far too much. We just wouldn't see it wash its face in layman's terms in a period of time that made investable sense. So I'd have to get somebody from Bristol to step into the room and answer that one, I'm afraid.
So there's two more questions which are more kind of technical side, so these could be answered by our following expert witnesses, but there's one here which I think you could answer quite quickly. Is local energy markets still on the national grid?
So when I talk about decentralised versus centralised, centralised is national grid. You still need national grid because, with the greatest respect in the world, if we built out every roof in GM with solar PV, and we did, we'd probably equate for enough generation for about 50% of our region's need. So you still need national grid to feed in. But it means that we, as a collective, are optimising how much we're taking from elsewhere, and we get energy security. Yes. Do we get to, if we're producing the energy ourselves, as individuals or as businesses or as local authorities, then we're energy security goes one step further, and it's actually about then shielding ourselves from incremental rises in cost. So at the moment I said to, I can't think who I said it to, but I said it to somebody outside that if you were to change from your current provider to another provider, you'd probably be paying about 33p. If you're outside of your capped cost, 33p. Last year, 15p. There's a bit of a cycle running here. So the more we can generate ourselves, the greater shielding we give ourselves to pricing, but then equally the ability to trade and optimise and make best use of the facilities we've got, and not wait for national government, not wait for Hinkley to come on board, not wait for all of the other things. But please bear in mind, we do need all of those other things. If anyone says to you that GM can do it on its own, I'm really sorry, it's not possible, but we can do a lot of it ourselves.
Thank you so much, Sean. So there's one more question which I think we'll definitely be able to answer tomorrow in more detail around the grid and the local energy market. So we'll keep that one for tomorrow. But thank you so much for sharing all that information and getting us started. And we'll finish off there and just take a few minute break before Matt comes to start off the conversation about energy prices and why they're rising. So thank you, Sean, and we'll let you know how we get on over the next few days.
Thank you, and I do genuinely mean this. I do want to hear warts and all. I describe myself as just a minion. At the end of the day, I'm just a cog in the wheel, but I have some ideas, but I need to hear it from other people. And just because my idea is one thing doesn't mean that we can't have everybody else's ideas come together, because that's what ideation's about. It's about bringing it all through, and it's about ensuring that we're all on the same page as we move forward. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for listening to me.